Hi guys, this is my review for Into the Wilderland, a GBHL 100 Middle-earth SPG tournament in Bicester.
So this was a 2-day tournament. So 7 games total. So this was using a pod system. So you did 4 games on day one, and then that determined your ranking. And then day two, 40 participants were broken into 5 pods of 8, and then you sort of duked it out in your group in a knockout type jam, and that then determined your final position. Um, So yeah, you're sort of a bit constrained in terms of your results by your standing on the first day, but then equally that could play out quite well if you somehow like just won all of your games first day, and then you can't go any lower than 8th. So that's quite cool. So I knew this would be a bit of a sweat fest, so I thought I'd bring as quite competitive list. So I settled on Assault on Helm's Deep just because I think I already have enough friends, so don't want to make any more. Um, so my list was 38 models at 600 points. So I've got the Uruk-hai Captain Leader with shield, one Uruk with banner and shield, 5 with shield, 5 with pike, 5 with crossbow. In second warband, I've got a Captain with shield, and then 4 warriors with shield, 4 warriors with pike, 5 crossbows, and then 1 random berserker. And I've just got 2 Isengard assault ballistas. So you'll notice there's no bomb. At the time, I wasn't too fussed about the bomb, because I thought my gun line and then the extra numbers I could have by not having the bomb would, um, compensate for that. So we'll see at the end how I feel about the list now. But let's look at the what I was worried about going into it and what I thought I could do quite well at. So obviously, I think what it does quite well at is quite obvious. There's a lot of fight 4, strength 4, D5 or 6 Uruk-hai with sort of decent courage, and only take courage tests when you've lost 66%. So they're very durable, very strong. And obviously, I've got a crazy gun line, so I've got 10 crossbows and 2 ballista. So if I can, then I will just sort of hang back and shoot, and that will hopefully be quite devastating. Obviously, being evil, I can shoot into my own combat, so if situation presented itself, that's an option. And at the end of the day, your crossbows are still sort of angry Uruk-hai with swords, so they can still get stuck in. So yeah, it's quite a lot of flexibility, and the leader's a bit of a beast as well, just 'cause he goes up to 3 attacks, 3 wounds, so he's a very good troop killer, or sort of lower tier hero killer potentially as well. Um, and that's pretty much it really. It's just kind of what it says on the tin really. Obviously, everyone don't need me to tell you that the ballista re-rolling to hit and scatter are just gross. So obviously, big heroes don't like it obviously, and it just means your opponent has to play in a particular way and sort of break up their shield walls a bit to avoid having guys flung around too much. Um, so it kind of helps you pick combats to begin with, because they'll come at you a bit more disorganized, and it also can sort of buy time, because sometimes what I was anticipating is opponents might try and hide from my gun line a bit, which might sort of negate my lack of cavalry a bit. So it means I can sort of steam forwards whilst they're sort of taking a more measured approach to sort of get into grips with me. But I hadn't actually used this list before. I sort of basically played against it 3 times, so I have a sort of fairly good idea of what it's like. And I think having the 2 ballista work quite well, because obviously that's just what the points allow, so that's what I took. But also, obviously having the 2 ballista, you can, depending on scenario, either sort of set them up together and just completely block out a portion of the board, or I think this is what I ended up doing, is deploy them sort of further apart to sort of cover angles and then also mutually support, because obviously they can't fire within 6 of themselves now because of the FAQ. So if you sort of have them, sort of just over 12 inches apart, then that can be quite good in terms of mutual assistance as well. But I obviously know that it's got weaknesses as well. So whilst I have 6 might, obviously I only really have 4 might anywhere near where the sort of battle line's going to be. And those 4 4 might are needed for calling heroic moves, heroic marches, and heroic combats, and for potentially winning fights. So it's obviously just not really enough might to go around. And I don't have strike either, so even sort of a mid-tier hero with strike can be quite a threat that I don't necessarily, my heroes don't necessarily have the sort of tools to deal with them. Obviously, I know they're defense 7s, and obviously my leader's got 3 wounds, so they're not, they're not too bad, and they can be, quite good tanks. But sometimes a really good hero might be able to just come and, just chop their head off in one go, which is bad. And other than that, I think it's just the lack of mobility, because obviously you do have the march, yes, if that's what you're willing to sort of use the might for, but you've got no cav or anything like that. And I think the ballista and crossbow are obviously very strong, but if you're if you're dice botch and you only have a couple of turns to shoot, it can be sort of something, can be an issue. Something I was a bit worried about as well, because obviously everything's only a 4+ to hit, and obviously even with the reroll with the ballista, you're still gonna sort of miss every now and again. So if your opponent sort of closes with you quickly and only gives you 2 turns to shoot, then I was a bit worried about that. So I just have to sort of consider that as part of my deployment, really. But other than that, I don't think there's any sort of anything that stands out as a sort of massive weakness, really. But yeah, okay, so let's get into the games. So game 1, I got drawn against Sam Grattan of Gollum Gamer fame. So it's a bit unfortunate because the scenario was hold ground, and obviously my ballista aren't super crazy about Maelstrom. But he also had Lake Town with Bard, 2 of the 2 girls, Alfred, Thorin on Goat, and a captain. Oh, and Hilda as well. And then just loads and loads of Lake Town militia. So it wasn't the end of the world, but I don't think it was. It's not the scenario I'd have chosen. Yeah, so obviously I got to deploy my ballista first. So I sort of thought about it, and I think there are a few hills which would be like really good, but I think I'd have to spend a turn moving my ballista into position. I just wanted to get them firing straight away, because obviously a maelstrom, they could. Obviously a lake town could be on top of me very quickly, so I didn't want to sort of fart about moving the ballista or anything. So I really wanted to win Maelstrom, the priority turn 1, which is really unusual. So obviously I lost it, and I basically, I think Sam spent probably 3 might total, I think, just to make sure all of his guys came on basically at my board edge where I deployed the ballista. So he sort of had captain on, one side of 1, and then Thorin, Bard, Alfred, and the kids in the middle, and then Hilda on the edge. So essentially, I wasn't going to be able to stop him from having at least one person in base contact with the ballista, and just destroying them basically. So I knew I only had 1 turn of shooting. So it's a bit unfortunate my placement. I placed them a bit closer together than I would like, just because of the angles I needed to sort of box out the objective in the middle. And it just meant there was a patch in the middle where I think if you positioned, especially a cavalry base just right, then it was within 6 of both. Yeah, so it was just a very thin line between them where you could just avoid being hit by both, which is a bit unfortunate. So yeah, so I rolled my first warband, which was the one without my leader in it, and I used them to sort of screen off 1 ballista, and I was sort of hoping if I was smart and won either a roll off or priority the following turn, then I might be able to save 1 ballista by sort of screening it from his main force, and then sort of getting round and tagging people. And he put Hilda in the middle of like a little defensive ring, but I was hoping I could combat through it and then just tag her, and I might be able to save 1 ballista, and that would be handy. And then my second warband came on, and I had to put them on the east or west. Everyone else was on the north. So I wasn't too sure whether to spend might and then come on and sort of join the fun and sort of see what we could do. Because if I could sort of box them into that area and just slaughter Lake Town, then I kind of didn't mind losing the ballista. But I opted to bring them on away from everyone else, and then sort of double march them to the middle. And then if the other half of my force just sort of held up stuff and died, and then either I lost enough men, or we timed out, or I killed enough Lake Town or something, I could sort of hopefully block them from getting to the middle in time. So that was the plan. I think essentially I got a few good ballista shots off, but didn't really shoot anything of note. I think I hit one of the children, but she lived, so I'm not a child murderer, so that's good. But I think basically my Uruks did better than I thought and held out for quite a long time without a banner. And Thorin, so I think Sam was quite unfortunate with his rolls with Bard and Thorin, because I think they both get free hero combats, but I think they both botched for either 1 or 2 turns. And I got Thorin off his goat, and I think I got Might out of Bard to not get off his horse. And there's not really too much to say, to be honest. I think obviously he took the ballista out, so I only got a couple of shots in, but I think they were, not bad shots, but not as many as I would like. And yeah, like, my Uruks just sort of got stuck in. I think I took a fair amount of Lake Town militia off. I know he wasn't quite broken at the end of the game, so it can't have been that many. But I thought they might just get overwhelmed and steamrolled, but it didn't play out that way. But I managed to sort of get in and hold the middle. So I think with about 20 minutes to go, I still had a few guys sort of right near the top of the board where they'd come on sort of holding stuff up. But he'd sort of started to move everything towards the middle to try and rush that, and then sort of get his heroes moved over as well. I think with 20 minutes to go, I think I was winning because I held the middle and he was kind of not getting there basically. It's basic. I think it was just basically a time thing where obviously he had plenty of time to kill my dudes, break me, and then just sort of break into the middle and hold the objective. So I think it sort of went wrong when I think I was sort of 7-0 up, and then I think he either killed my leader or broke me. So then it was like, I was still just ahead, and then he killed my leader, and then it was a draw, and then I think he killed my banner, and then he managed to get more guys into the middle and sort of break into the middle. So I think then it was 10-0, and then last turn we had just enough time to get one more turn in, which was a bit unfortunate because then my last guy in the middle ran away because I'd broken by that point, and then I lost 12-0. So yeah, I think the only thing I might have considered doing differently is whether to get that second warband just stuck into the melee turn 1, try and box in his main force, and maybe use my crossbows at the back to run interference on the rest, and then maybe just like run 1 or 2 guys to the middle, and then maybe try and save a ballista. But to be honest, I probably would just stick with what I did, to be honest, but probably just try and play it better. But yes, that was a bit unfortunate, but it was a really fun game actually. I really enjoyed it. I thought I'd just get slapped about, but I think I made Sam work for it a bit, and I think I hope he was sweating a bit when we had 20 minutes to go and he wasn't in the middle yet. But it was all for naught because I lost, but it was a good game. So that was game 1. So after having the slightly unfortunate draw of hold ground against Lake Town, I then managed to get destroy the supplies against Ugluk Scouts with Mr. Joe Gonzalez at the helm, one of the Goldilocks and the Great Bears GBHL team. And somehow, in the space of a year, he's actually gotten quite good at the game. So it's gone from being the whipping boy to doing the whipping. So I was a bit nervous. So so I basically started with the view that I'm just going to sort of form a gun line and whittle down numbers, and then not even bother going for his supplies. Try and cover all my bases as best I can, and then if I was able to break him, I think that was the idea, is to break him and hold on to my 3 and try and squeak a 2-0, and then once he's broken and hopefully I have the numbers advantage, sort of run past and then try and tag as many supplies as I could. Obviously, ideally, I'd also kill Ugluk and his banner. But I think Joe saw through that immediately because he hid Ugluk and the banner at the back, and then just put like this wall of scouts in front of me, which is quite intimidating. Because I think he had like high 40s, I think, model count wise. So he was a lot higher than me, which is surprising because my army's not small. And obviously all the Uruks are movement 8, which is nasty for this kind of scenario. So yeah, that's kind of the plan. So I sort of had 2 shield walls protecting the left and middle. He only had a few guys on my right, so I kind of entrusted 3 crossbows and then whoever else I needed to move over just to sort of protect that. Then just ballista right at the back. So yeah, that was kind of the plan, and basically I just kept shooting. And the short version is, I think by the time he reached me, I'd killed 13 models just by shooting. And I knocked some guys over with the ballista, and sort of sent a few guys scattering backwards into other people, and yeah, knocking everyone about. And I think the problem is Joe had so many models that it's kind of impossible to like not set up a shot for at least one of my ballista. So if I was sort of careful about what I chose, then I could sort of get people. And Mal here had to spend a turn out in the open to reach me once he sort of stopped hiding behind a bunch of boxes where I couldn't see him. And obviously he just immediately got nailed by a ballista, and he saved the strength 9 hit with his fate roll, which is annoying. Although he had 3 might, so he was never going to fail that and get insta-killed. But he did take a wound from strength 6 hit into getting flung into a wall, so that was pretty funny. But yeah, other than that, sort of the battle lines were joined, and yeah, I sort of got the best of it by holding sort of a choke point on the left, sort of forcing his guys to cower on my right, and then in the middle, I think the numbers had sort of turned so I wasn't too outnumbered, so I could sort of spread out and hold that a bit, and then I could sort of push my crossbows forwards if I needed to. And obviously this whole time my ballista were just sort of shooting as and when they could. And yeah, basically I think the middle combat went my way and I whittled down numbers. I managed to tie people up on the right. And yeah, my leader managed to sort of sneak in and kill Grishnak, even though he was striking. It was a bit of a risk, but it was a calculated move because I could sort of trap him on his own, and he's only on 2 dice, and I think he had like 1 might by then. So I'm sort of calculating that hopefully he won't get a 5 or 6, and then if he loses, then that's a dead Grishnak, which is luckily what happened. And then on the left, Mal here had me dead to rights, to be honest. He had my captain trapped and he combated into my captain quite well. So it was a good move by Joe. And then he had way more dice than me and he totally fluffed it. And I don't think I even shielded because I don't know why. Yeah, and basically I just turned around and bonked up Mal here on the head and he died. So yeah, so he got hit with a ballista which Joe couldn't avoid, and then Joe did a really smart move with him, and then it just didn't pay off, and yeah, the dice obviously were upset with him. And on the left sort of just it was a bit give and take the whole game, and yeah, nothing too interesting happened there. Sort of won some, lost some. But then I messed up really badly because I was sort of had a loose sort of collection of people around the objectives rather than sort of having someone on guard duty like on the objective. And that meant that when Joe won priority, he was able to tag all my dudes, and he tagged 2 of the objectives. One I couldn't do anything about it, but the other one, I think it was either going to get charged by one of my ballista crew that I'd sort of been moving up to cover the objective since they weren't really needed for shooting by that point, and then or sort of a random shield dude I had in the middle. So he got 1. The other I managed to stop him destroying it that turn, and yeah, then managed to sort of beat him off from there. And yeah, the middle kind of things had quietened down by then because everyone was sort of dead. and on the left, I think I got the better of the combat, so I always had enough dudes just to tag and make sure those supplies weren't destroyed. So yeah, so Joe was broken by that point. I don't think I was broken by that point, but I knew time was of the essence now, so I sort of ran because when he destroyed those supplies, I was like, well, it's 2-2 now, so um, I don't know why. It's just not in me to play for a draw when I know I can win. So I sort of tried to keep the game going for as long as I could, and then run my leader up to the middle supply, and then my Uruk over to the left, and they were both sort of relatively open. And it sort of came down to the last turn really, because he won. He either won priority or called a heroic move, I can't remember. But either way, he managed to tag my leader before he could go and get the supply. So it was sort of a leader on leader thing. But he had to move Ugluck out of stand fast range of the banner, I believe. So the banner had to take a test, and I was sort of relying on the banner running away. So I then got sort of snuck the extra VP for 3-2. But that didn't happen. And then sort of the leader off, Ugluck struck and then got the 6 and then did 2 wounds to me. So obviously I didn't die, but it meant that he squeaked the 3-2 win for because I'd broken him, but he destroyed a supply and wounded my leader. So I sort of threw away a draw there, but I think I was just really annoyed with myself for misplaying the situation in the middle, which meant I lost the supply because I was kind of winning combats and shooting everywhere. And although I'd lost loads of dudes, I was still sort of had the better of it, I think, or at least had things under control. And it's just kind of my stupidity that lost that one. And then, yeah, so I sort of was like, right, and just sort of charged my leader forwards. And yeah, but by then, I think Joe had been 25%ed in that final turn. So yeah, I lost to Joe, so that's something I'm going to have to live with now. But yeah, no, I enjoyed that game. Thanks, Joe. And yeah, I'll have to get my own back at the next tournament. And yeah, because I'm worried that I'm the whipping boy of the group now, which isn't good. But anyway, on to game 3. So this one I ended up playing another teammate, Charlie, who was bringing his bears. So he had 10 bears and sorry. So he had 10 Bjornings and then Grimbjorn and Beorn. Unfortunately, we drew Assassination, and the board was quite densely populated with buildings. And Charlie also got to choose Table Edge, so I was a bit worried, to be honest. So I sort of was umming and ahhing about what to do, and I think what I decided was basically to have my 2 captains hiding at the back and siege engines obviously at the back with the siege veterans hidden because those are his 4 objectives. And I was basically just going to kill all the Bjornings and try and win 3-0 and stay unbroken. So I needed to kill 6 or 7 Bjornings, I think, to break him, and then 7 Bjornings to break him, and then not break, protect my leader, and make sure none of my other heroes died. So that was the plan. And obviously I'll target Grimbjorn with, my ballista. Just in case I got lucky, I suppose. So basically what happened is obviously Charlie deployed on the midpoint of the board and basically just sort of charged forwards. And I'm not sure how many I killed before combat started, but my shooting was just horrific. I had 5 crossbows on the building on the right and then 5 on the left with sort of shield wall protecting the ballista and heroes in the middle. And obviously I need 4s to hit and then 4s to wound Bjornings, and whilst they're 2 wounds each, obviously I've got 10 crossbows, and I must have killed half by shooting, I think pretty comfortably half. And also, what helped as well was that I obviously kept firing at Grimbjorn, and obviously on a 2 to 5 on the scatter roll, it scatters onto a friend. That actually kind of suited me because it just meant that I think I sort of just nailed like one Bjorning at a time because obviously the insta die with the ballista. So obviously it kind of works for me either way. Either it hits Grimbjorn and then he risks sort of insta dying. For the bear saves and the fate rolls go wrong. But if he scatters onto a friend, also great because, worst case I just fling them back. Best case I just insta kill them on a 3+. So that was quite good, yeah. And I sort of managed to tie the bears up for a turn because I won priority, and because I had my berserker on the left, I was able to just charge him into Grimbjorn, tie him up, so I had an extra turn of shooting. So that was quite handy. Although I think, if memory serves, I think I nailed my own berserker with the ballista, but that's fine by me because then Grimbjorn's not combating out of that, so that's fine. I think the Bjorning took a wound and fell in the puddle, so that was pretty funny. But then after that, the bears basically got in and did bear stuff, and it was grim. And I think basically they didn't really botch, or if they did, it was in a combat where I didn't have that many guys in, so it didn't matter. Because I think a couple of times I sort of, just sort of had one guy in and just spear supported him with, a couple of pikes to get the 3 attacks to sort of try and slow them down. Because that's all I was doing, is trying to slow down the bears, and obviously wound if I could, but mostly just slow down whilst I could kill the Bjornings. So I think they may have lost a couple of times, and I only had like 1 or 2 guys in there. And then obviously the time I sort of loaded up with 4 guys with full support and everything, that's when they get the 6 and then just like absolutely slap like 4 guys in one go. So there's not much to say about that. Bears just doing bear stuff. Bjornings, again, if they won the combat, they were sort of crushing it, and if they lost, then there's a good chance I'm just killing them. So that's kind of, it's just sort of how it went, and the whole time my ballista was sort of just firing, and I kept firing them at Grimbjorn. I think a couple of times I skewered my own dudes in combat with him, which is a bit unfortunate when there's sort of more than one. Because when there's one, it's fine because he's not combating then. But if there's more than one, it's just a bit annoying because it's one less dice in the fight. So yeah, I don't think I hit Grimbjorn too much, which is a bit unfortunate. So I think my dice let me down a little bit with the sort of in the ways and that sort of thing. But it wasn't too bad. But basically, I eventually broke, which is annoying because we were then both broken, which means it's 2-2. But I just didn't really see what I could do other than just sort of carrying on shooting, sort of switching to shooting the bears and with the crossbows and ballista, although my crossbows kept getting charged, so it didn't really matter too much. I sort of hid my heroes behind this sort of terrain piece, and I sort of sensed Charlie's move was to combat off of my guys, run around the pillar, and then sort of hopefully win the roll off, and then get into my sort of captain and sort of leader captain, and there's a very good chance he'll just one pump both of them. So I sort of then hid them out of line of sight, like in the rocks a bit more. So I blocked line of sight, so when he sort of moved around, he couldn't charge me the following turn. But I think the game ended before he could sort of get him in anyway. So we both broke, and it was 2-2. It's a little unfortunate because if the game could have ended the first turn, it could have. I would have won 2-0, but the second turn it could have ended, it did end, and then by then it was a draw. And I think possibly the following turn would have also been 2-2 because my heroes were safe from being charged for at least one turn, including my siege veterans. But then any turn after that, if the game kept going on, I think Charlie would have then won because I couldn't protect my heroes forever, basically. And I can't remember who his... Oh yeah, his target was my pink... It was my pink siege veteran. So yeah, I think he definitely would have slapped him, given a couple more turns. So I was a little aggrieved that the game didn't end first chance he got, and I sort of squeaked the win. But equally, if the game kept going on, it would have been much worse. So I think I'll take the draw. But yeah, no, that was a fun game as well. Again, I kind of yeah, it was a bit unfortunate that it was assassination on a dense board, but I think I played it right. It just the bears were just sort of a bit too killy, and I broke a bit too quickly, really. So yeah. So anyway, so 2 losses and a draw is not ideal, but then we go on to game 4. So last game of the day, I was playing Mr. Sunny Hunter of Middle Earth and Mercia fame. And obviously this is a grudge match and a rematch after our last game at Borden Brum when I lost to him when I was using Riders of Theoden. So he's using a similar list to then as well. So he's got Suladan and the Mahud King, and then just a bunch of half trolls, Mahud warriors, bunch of camels, a bunch of infantry, just Harad warriors with bow and spear mostly, I think. And then a couple of Watchers of Karna. Oh yeah, and then some Abrakan guards. He did tell me how he sort of swapped it around a little bit from that list, but I can't remember the exact details to be honest. Sorry, study. Seem to recall you said something about getting another half troll or two, so that's pretty spicy because they're very good. So he had about the same models as me, I think. But obviously had the camels, so sort of going into it. Oh, he had a couple of serpent riders as well. So going into it, I was worried about all of those, and that the board had more sort of line of sight blocking terrain on it than I would have liked. So I was a bit worried he was just going to sneak some stuff past me whilst I sort of slogged up the board and he tied up the rest of my dudes. And I'm also famously bad at recon, so there's that. So I think it wasn't helpful. I think both his guys came on turn 1 and both my guys came on turn 2, so I already sort of felt like I was a turn down. But obviously my ballista were on the board, so yes, obviously my ballista were also on the board, so they sort of kept Sunny honest, really, I think, and I think. Yeah, Sonny was a bit nervous of the ballista, so I think he hid behind. There's a couple of terrain pieces. He put his Mahud behind one, his Harad behind the other, and I had sort of one ballista either end of the board. So, and I sort of slowly moved them forwards because I kept not getting shots because of obviously sort of hiding behind the rocks and stuff, to sort of try and widen the angle. So that sort of delayed things enough so that I could move my guys up towards the middle of the board without spending the might to march. So that was quite handy. So I think when battle was joined, I was in the middle of the board and I'd sort of set up my crossbows, my shield wall, and my ballista where I was all sort of happy with them. So I sort of had Uruks either side of the main middle bit. And then I just sort of had crossbows covering the left against sort of a few Harad and trying to sneak around there. And then I sort of just had crossbows scattered everywhere, so they could sort of shoot some. They could all shoot something, and they all had sort of different options of shooting. And then my ballista at the back, sort of, keeping him honest with Suladan and the Mahud. And because of wanting to avoid the ballista, the guys on his left sort of came out in obviously not set up for sort of a shield wall formation, and the camel sort of came out separately whilst the rest of the Mahud were sort of hiding to sort of intercept me as I tried to reach his board edge. And it was a bit of a camel massacre basically because I think I shot a load of them, and then also I won the priority to charge them because I think there was a turn where I suffered a few impact hits, which wasn't great, but then. Yeah, but then I think they were sort of hiding behind the middle rocks, and I was able to sort of charge them and get in and squish them. And likewise, I think I shot the Serpent Riders quite early on as they were trying to sneak down my left. So my 3 crossbows were sort of set up to deal with that. So yeah, so that went well, and because the Haradrim sort of came out a bit ragtag, it meant I was able to sort of charge in and pick my combats quite well. So by the time sort of Suladan came in as banner support behind, I'd sort of whittled down numbers enough to a point where I was sort of quite happy with that side of things. And again, I think the short version there is I think Suladan sort of came in and botched his dice, having struck. I can't remember the ins and outs of it, to be honest, but I remember Sonny's dice were horrific the whole time, and Suladan in particular. I think he like squished a couple of dudes and then sort of struck up to deal with my captain. I think he failed to win the combat having charged me, and then I killed his horse and sort of put a wound on him or something. And then I sort of whittled down the rest of the Haradrim and then was able to sort of surround and take down Suladan. So I got the leader kill, and then I was sort of able to mop up shortly afterwards, and then just run that whole flank down basically. And I think he was sort of broken by that point. But as he was sort of dying over there, he sort of chucked his Muhidin on the other side, and there's not really too much to say other than that I just got half trolled, and they're horrific. So there was another thing. Again, Sonny's dice were horrific. So naturally, the Mahud King charged in against my leader, failed to get the impact hit, struck up. I realised I ballsed up massively, but it's kind of what it is, to be honest. Because at least the game was, sort of drawing to an end, and my guys were sort of in a good place, and he'd sort of be slogging down the board. So I was a bit like, well, if my leader dies, it's not the end of the world. Then he struck up, and then I think he had 4 dice plus a half troll, I think, so 6 dice total. And I think he didn't get the 6 with the trolls, and then I think with the Mahud King, I think he got like a 3 high because it wasn't multiple up to a 6. And I think I got the 6, and then I just basically killed his camel, and partly because obviously he's much more of a threat on camel, but then also because he's the only one who could have maybe got off of my board edge. So basically, yeah, my Uruks over there just sort of got massacred, but my leader sort of managed to get him off his camel and then escape, sort of with the banner and another guy, to sort of try and get to his board edge, and keep my leader from dying. There was a glimmer of hope because I think Sonny loaded up a heroic combat with the king and then a bunch of other dudes. But then one of his other guys passed a courage test, and obviously he just thought I'll just throw him in on my leader. But I had a might left, so because obviously his plan was to heroic combat into my leader. But then I called a heroic combat with my leader, and if I won the roll off, I was just going to run away. But the gambit didn't work, and yeah, I lost the roll off. So then he combated into my leader, and then my leader got squished. So that wasn't ideal. So I think from memory, I think that was I'm pretty sure my leader died. So yeah, it's probably 12-2, I think, because I got so I'd have got the 7 points for getting the models off, and then killing his leader and then breaking him, but he killed my leader. So I think that's one of those where I think Sonny just got diced a little bit, because obviously my guys were sort of did a lot of shooting and killing that way, and then I think when it came to rolling any dice, he couldn't seem to roll higher than a 4, so that was quite helpful. Yeah, we were sort of talking about it afterwards, and I don't really know what the sort of alternative play is for him, because he almost put everyone on one side, sort of push forwards, but then I suppose you're sort of saying that limits his options, and that's true because I then could have just intercepted it with the bulk of my force and then run a few guys off around the edge maybe, but yeah, I don't know. What I was scared of him doing is sort of just charging forwards, just taking the ballista hits and just sort of managing to scatter them so I only kill a couple of dudes a turn, just sort of marching forwards and then fighting sort of in my third, especially after my infantry didn't turn up on turn 1. And then sort of if we're fighting in my third, then he just sort of sneaks some camels or a few guys off and then wins that way. But I don't know if that would have been better, because I don't know if he would have been shot to pieces, because my dice were pretty hot. So yeah, so I don't know. All I can say is that's what I was scared of. But then equally, yeah, if he'd done that, I might have just shot him off the table. Yeah, but either way, it was a good game, and I think no matter how Sonny played, I think he was going to get shot a lot, and that was going to, since my dice were good for shooting, I think that was probably going to swing things my way anyway, really. So I suppose it was a bad matchup as well for him. So anyway, that was day one, and I ended with 2 losses, a win and a draw. So I was hoping to get 3 wins to try and get into the top pod, and then if I just got slapped about all day day two, then that would be fine because I'd still be in the top 8. So I pretty much did the opposite of that. So I think Mark was saying I ended 25th on day one, so I was one away from getting into pod 3, but I was top of pod 4, um, which is a bit sad because obviously if I'd snuck into the pod above, then it means I could sort of finish no lower than when I started the day. But since I was top of pod 4, it basically meant the only way was down. So I had to win all the games day 2 to sort of stay top of that pod. Um, so yeah, that was that anyway. So then we sort of moved on to day 2 and all the knockout type jam. Okay, so on to game 5. So we began the day by drawing the kill the enemy scenarios, and luckily we drew to the death. So I was playing Ashlum of also of Middle Earth in Mercia fame, and he was bringing his Riders of Theoden, which obviously I'm very familiar with Theoden, Aemir, and Dernhelm. It's interesting actually. I seem to be the only one who doesn't really take Aemir because every time I play Rise of Theoden, there's always an Aemir. I tend to be a gambling man. But anyway, so he had that and a bunch of Royal Guards with throwing spear, and then a bunch of riders without throwing spear. So it's pretty straightforward. So I think I can't remember who chose table edge. It doesn't really matter too much because the table was pretty open. I knew I needed to be very careful because I needed to shoot everyone off their horses, and I needed turns to do that. And I ended up, I wasn't too sure about the setup to begin with. I basically set up my 2 ballista with sort of apart, so with one in the corner, sort of covering the middle of the table, and then I put a shield wall in front of it. So I sort of had this is how I deployed a few times. Is I had my shield wall, my shield uruks in the front rank with the crossbows behind, and then when combat happened, I sort of either moved the crossbows out to the side or swapped them around with the pikes or something. So at least they had the D6 protection from stuff like throwing spears. And then the other ballista I deployed on a hill in the middle, sort of covering the left of the board. So the idea is that that ballista probably had the best field of fire, and sort of one of my shield walls was them sort of protecting it from the left where there was a hill and some sort of trees that Ash could hide behind and sort of run up on me. But my ballista sort of in the back corner was covering the right of that ballista, and then my shield wall was covering the front. So that was sort of the plan. I think Ash deployed with Dernhelm and Aemir on the right, Theoden on the left, and I think Ash wasn't too sure how to get to grips with me and spent a few turns sort of moving his right up pretty quickly and sort of hiding them behind stuff. But then on the left, I think he moved up a few Royal Guards who sort of got shot at quite a lot, whilst the rest sort of hid, and then they sort of trickled in a bit, and he had a couple of guys at the back hidden behind some ruins sort of shooting at me. So at that point I was quite happy because I was just shooting my ballista and sort of knocking guys off horses and killing some other guys, or shooting guys off their horses and whatnot. And I think after the game, yeah, Ash said it was a bit of a mistake, but he set up his cav sort of just over 6 inches away from me, and sort of get the charge and sort of threw weapons that turn. Then I think the following turn he sort of stayed there and then had another turn just throwing weapons at me, and I think that played into my hands a bit because it just meant, because I basically needed turns of shooting, and that just sort of meant I had an extra turn of shooting. So I was able to get some guys off horses or dead which is obviously better. I think by the time combat was joined, he'd lost 6 dudes and then a few dismounts. And of a force of 21, that's pretty nasty. And Theoden managed to get to my sort of main battle line with his banner and himself still alive and on Snowmane. So that wasn't great. But on the left, Aemir broke cover but didn't have anyone nearby for scattering, so my ballista just sort of thought, oh, okay, and shot him off his horse. Obviously he's got all the fate, so he shrugged it off. But it meant Aemir was off his horse, which was perfect, I think, for me. And then the riders over there just sort of got stuck in as well. So I think there's not too much to say about what happened on my left. I think basically I took a charge, and guys died, and I think Dernhelm was doing some business as well. Although she was a bit fragile because I think I hit her with a what did I hit her? I think I hit her just with a crossbow, and she had to spend 3 fate to keep her horse, which was pretty awesome. So I wasn't too sure about Merry using might, but I think the model has horse lord, so I think that's fine. I think it's not really come up for me before actually. I tend to not fail 3 fates in a row. Yeah, so that was all good, and basically I was then able to sort of, when I got the counter charge, I obviously just surrounded and killed the riders, and I think I did a combat with my captain as well, just to kill some riders, and then I chuck some dudes around to sort of slow Aemir down, get it from my ballista. So by the time he was near my ballista, I wasn't really firing anyway because I was worried about scattering into my own guys and my own leader. So the combat on my right was more interesting because his Royal Guard came in and just did what they do and killed loads of Uruks. And then he won the roll off on the second turn, and they charged in again and killed loads of dudes. And Theoden himself charged in, nearly combated into my leader, but didn't quite make it. So I was able to sort of protect him, and then I think the following turn I was able to just surround and kill Theoden. So even though he struck, I think obviously then he's on 2 dice, and I think I'd killed his banner by then. So I think by the end of the game it was only Dernhelm and Aemir alive, and there's probably a few Royal Guard kicking around somewhere, but nothing too significant. So yeah, that was a perfect scenario for me because it just meant he had to come and deal with me because I'd just fling ballista at him like across the board until he did, and there's nowhere he could have hidden his entire force that wasn't going to get ballisted. So it was kind of on him to come and deal with me, which is exactly what I wanted, obviously. And yeah, I think we were discussing afterwards, and I think it would have been better to sort of just send everyone in. Just get in as quickly as you can and sort of get stuck in and minimise the shooting, and obviously make sure you set up the scatters and try to avoid having too many dismounts and that sort of thing. So I think I just got too many turns of shooting whilst you're sort of running around and hiding some people and charging some other people in. So I think just getting everyone in was probably the only way he could have won, I think, because they sort of trickled in. It was a bit better for me, and I think I felt really bad about how I played initially because obviously it's just kind of me sitting back and shooting and doing an evil laugh basically. But I knew because I've played them as well, against them and with them. I know that when Rise of Theoden charge, they can just murder, and if they repeatedly win roll-offs, then they will just murder loads of Uruks. So I kind of, even though I felt very, very confident when we joined combat because I'd already killed a quarter of his force and dehorsed Aemir and some other dudes, I knew that it could still go wrong. And I think he charged with literally about 4 Royal Guard, a banner, and Theoden, and he just munched through my troops. So so I made sure I didn't let up because I knew that could potentially be disaster. But Yeah, that one ended 12-0 because I wasn't quite broken, but I sort of got all the points. So Theoden died and he was broken and quartered, and I killed his banner and kept my banner safe. But yeah, so that was game one of day two out of the way. So I was going to finish in the top half of the pod now, so that was good. So game five, I drew Luke Hilder's Rivendell Knights, and we were playing a domination. So we set the objectives up pretty evenly around the central point. So when he chose a table edge, there wasn't really any massive advantage. He obviously chose the edge, which sort of gave him the most cover. But this table was quite open, so that suited me quite well. So there was some sort of ponds and stuff. So we were playing them as shallow water because we rolled off at the beginning whether it was shallow or deep, just because I think shallow water doesn't affect cavalry but is difficult terrain for infantry. So it, so it does matter. Yeah, it's fairest way I think is just to roll it off. So that was all good. So he had Elrond, 16 Rivendell Knights with shield, and then one with shield and banner, and then just one random dude on foot with a bow. So yeah, just sort of standard Rivendell Knight list, scary in the right circumstances, and yeah. So I sort of set up my two ballista basically again so that they could sort of maximise angles of attack whilst also deploying sort of, I think they're like 14 inches apart or something, just because I learned from my Lake Town mistake and made sure they'd be able to shoot something that's in the middle of them as well. So yeah, you wouldn't be able to hide Elrond like exactly between them or something like that. And then yeah, with my shield wall, I sort of just based them out so cavalry couldn't get past, but also just to maximise the ground I could cover. And yeah, just sort of set up my gun line and yeah, tried to protect crew as best I could. So I put two crew on the inside of my little formation to make sure he couldn't sort of just tag them quite easily and stop it firing. So yeah, that was all good. So basically, I just entirely conceded all board control to begin with. So that's probably good for him because it meant that I think he controlled. I think he had a guy on all of the objectives, sort of turn two. So technically, I was losing 10-0 from the outset, but luckily this game goes on until quartering, so that gives me some time to get things together. So again, not too much to say. Sort of turn 1 and 2, he didn't bother hanging back and shooting, which was obviously wise because I was always going to outshoot. So turn 1, they sort of came in and he hid Elrond to sort of get some in the ways and stuff. And yeah, I think I just I shot a few guys. I think I shot a couple of guys off their horses and killed a couple of other guys maybe with shooting. And basically, I didn't care about killing. I wanted to dismount them, so I was sort of shooting down the line. And as soon as I dismounted, the plan was just to move on to the next guy. Once they're off the horses, they're just high elves, and suddenly they're nowhere near as good. So yeah, that was good. So I think two quite major things happened early on, which at the time didn't seem, too major. But basically, I managed to dismount Elrond. I can't remember if it was a crossbow or a ballista shot. I think it was a crossbow. So that was very good because then Elrond's nowhere near as threatening. And then the other thing is I just managed to nuke the banner with, I think that's when I got a direct hit with the ballista and I just nuked the banner. So those two things I think limited the effectiveness of the knights quite a lot. And yeah, basically the knights charged in, they killed some dudes when they won combats, when they didn't kill combats they just sort of died. I was able to sort of get in and murder some knights basically, so that was quite good. Yeah, I also didn't, I tried not to take any chances with how I set things up. Just because I could tell Luke knew what he was doing just from the way he set up his knights. So he only charged probably about half his line in, with the rest sort of hanging back. And I think that's just so that when he gets countercharged, he can then charge in the next lot to then sort of A, rescue his first lot and stop them getting trapped, and then B, just make sure he's murdering stuff every turn. So he's not sort of, it's not like an all or nothing type thing, especially with the lack of might. And then also he was using his lance at all times other than when he needed the elven blade, and then he swapped to the sword. So when my captains were in, he'd swap to the sword. So I was a bit like, yeah, I just need to go in and just sort of keep hammering and then not let up. But yeah, other than that, I just sort of, yeah, I sort of just won the roll-offs and sort of whittled down the knights. And then Elrond sort of did Elrond stuff. I think that was a turn when he was trying to 25% himself because he would have won the combat. And in every combat, I had a guy not with a shield. So I think you can only shield if everyone has a shield in the combat. So he'd two-hand and fate and basically just die. But he didn't die quite enough, so I had that extra turn to run in and take the objectives. And I think yeah, I think that's what swung it, is Elrond being off his horse, the banner being dead, and then I think I was able to ballista two knights off of the middle and then back right objective as well to clear those two off. So it meant he only held one objective with his archer sort of in the back left. And meanwhile, I think I controlled the two near me and then the central one. I think it's one of those where if I sort of, what I didn't want to do is do what I did in Newbury when in Recon, and that's get too killy and end the game too early and not do the objective. So it was, so I suppose I was trying to kill knights to make sure they couldn't sort of win, they couldn't win by sort of murdering all my guys and then doing the objectives. So I sort of whittled down numbers enough where I kind of felt like was sort of dominant, but then somehow not kill him too quickly to end the game. So that was a bit of a weird balance, and I think I probably was fairly fortunate in how that played out. And yeah, so that's second win of day 2. So that was good. It was a good game. Last game of the day, and I was playing for who won Pod 4. So I was playing James Campbell, who had just defeated my esteemed colleague Paul Kelly, so it definitely wasn't Phil Kelly this weekend. And yeah, James is bringing Blackgate Opens, and we drew Divide and Conquer. So a few things. He obviously has more models than me, because I think he had 45 or 48, something like that. And obviously he has the thing where if you outnumber in combat, then you get +1 to wound, which is scary because he probably will be outnumbering me. He also has a massive troll with 2 fate because he's the super troll, so that's not great for my ballista. And obviously the Mouth of Sauron's good as well. I think people underestimate him, but he's good. So yeah, so that was so I wasn't really sure what to make of it, to be honest, because obviously I have a lot of numbers, but 6 of them are manning the ballista, 10 have crossbows, so that kind of means I don't have a ton of dudes in my shield wall if my crossbows are sort of hanging back and doing some shooting. So I was sort of worried about defeat in detail, really, and him sort of coming in and pushing my shield wall around, and then claiming the middle whilst my crossbows and my ballista was just sort of like in no man's land, really. So yeah, he deployed his. Oh, so he had a captain as well, obviously. So he deployed his captain and troll together in one corner, and then Mouth of Sauron in the other. And I suppose the idea there to be to spread the march out, which obviously makes sense. And then I basically put a warband and a ballista in each corner. It did sort of cross my mind to put them together, but I think I made the right call in splitting them up to maximise angles of attack. And also what I didn't want to do is load up one part of the board and then allow him to send all of his guys in one direction, save for sort of like, 5 or 10 guys just going to go and pin my ballista. It doesn't matter if he killed them or not, and just go and take them out or engage the crew or something. So I thought I wanted to spread out. So yeah, one of my ballista was able to shoot at the Mordor Troll warband quite early on, and just because of the numbers, there's just nothing James could do to avoid, like, not getting guys sort of flung about. So I got a shot for turn 1, which sort of flung a few walks about, which was awesome. And yeah, I think I got a few crossbow shots off, but then after that they sort of hid out of sight on the other side of this big set of rocks. So I then had to move my ballista and crossbow up there to then sort of cover the Mouth of Sauron's warband instead. And on the opposite end, the ballista was sort of moving up in a spot where I sort of felt it was relatively protected by rocks on both sides, but covered the middle, and also would cover where I expected the Mordor Troll Chief's warband to sort of emerge. And then meanwhile, my guys were just sort of one was basically going to die slowly as a speed bump for the Mordor Trolls warband, and then the other one was going to rush in the middle with a few guys on the side objective, and sort of, yeah, just hopefully pick apart Mouth of Sauron's warband. So that was the plan. So again, my shooting was on fire this game. So I think my crossbows were sort of picking orcs off because he had quite a lot of bows with shield, not shield, spear. So I was just trying to sort of target the squishy stuff, and then after that do the Moran and orcs, just because I need to reduce numbers, and so I need to avoid him sort of double teaming me with orcs. So to get the +1, but also I think I just need to break him quite as early as I can. But the warband I sort of put as a speed bump did quite a good job at the speed bump actually. I sort of said at the beginning we'd sort of figure out if fight 3 Moran and orcs are worth it against fight 4 Uruks, and I think the fight 4 was paying off quite a lot actually, so that was quite handy. And it was just a case of trying to contain the troll and then just sort of hold back the tidal wave of orcs really. So they were sort of doing a holding action with some crossbows and ballista shots sort of chipping in. And then on the other side, I sort of had some guys guarding the left objective and sort of engaging a couple of sneaky orcs in the terrain. And then this is where I suddenly felt like I had no numbers because I had to send a couple of guys to run interference on the Mouth of Sauron's warband, but then my sort of holding force was sort of falling apart and also sort of trickling past, so I then had to send my leader and a few other dudes to sort of go and shore that side up. And then my crossbows are sort of doing a mixture of sort of moving and shooting at this point, so some of them were sort of advancing up. And my ballista that had shot the Mordor Trolls warband to begin with was sort of slowly edging towards the middle because it either couldn't shoot or it just wasn't worth shooting. Like he could scatter onto an orc that would probably just do more damage to me, or something like that. So he was just sort of scooching up, and again my crossbows were sort of doing the same. We were sort of slowly running out of time in the game, and I sort of held the middle, but I only lightly held it because I had to move all my guys off of it. So for a lot of it, he was controlling one, but I was contesting it. And then likewise with me on the other one, because he had some sneaky orcs nearby. So it was pretty much all down to the middle one. And then if either of us could break or sort of kill leaders or whatever, I think by the end of it, we were both quite close to broken. And again, my holding force basically did their job and held up just long enough. And on the last turn, I called a move with my leader, and he called one with the troll. And I think we said that basically the game's going to come down to who wins this. So if he was able to win it, then he'd tag my dudes and run past me and get the objective, and there's not much I could do about it. Or at least stop me sort of getting any more guys on it at the very least. But fortunately, I won it, and I was able to just tag everyone in a line. So I just stopped everyone getting to the central objective. And my leader was just about contesting his objective. But what he did do, which I don't know why I didn't see coming, but he did the Mordor, because it was his priority, so he did the Troll Chieftain first and barged him into my leader. So he won the fight, and then he rolled the 4 inches to get into me. I think he only needed a 3, but he got the 4. So he got into my leader, so he had his troll, a captain, and then a friend. And obviously I lost the fight, but wasn't quite trapped. So the troll needed 4s. I can't remember what the captain needed. I think he was 5s down to 4s, and the other guy was like 6s down to 5. So it was pretty grim. Somehow I didn't die. I think I saved my fate, and then he caused 3 wounds total. So since I saved my fate, I was alive on 1 wound. So that was pretty miraculous, to be completely honest. I think I think he needs to have a word with his dice because I just sort of lucked out there basically. So that was very nearly a dead leader on the last turn. In terms of the middle, I'm a bit annoyed I didn't get a photo of it actually, because in the middle on the last turn he had the Mouth of Sauron had charged my banner next to it. I had 2 crossbows, one of which was in, one was out, and then I'd moved up my siege engine, so one of the crew was in. So I had 3. So he had the guy who charged my crossbows, the Mouth of Sauron, and then a random orc archer in the middle. So the orc archer was on his own. So basically I used 4 of my crossbows to try and shoot the orc out, which I failed to do. But then I ballisted him, so, so I hit, and there was no one else to scatter it onto. So he took a strength 9 and the strength 6 for sort of crashing into a wall. So he was very dead. So I was controlling the middle objective. Then the Mouth of Sauron killed my banner, so then it was equal, and it all came down to my 2 crossbows into a shielding Moran and Orc. If I could, yeah, if I could win the fight and kill him, I would control the central objective, and very, very luckily that's what happened. That's how that ended. We were both not quite broken. I think he was like 7 models off. I can't remember how close I was, but I was a little way off. I think I'd lost like 12 or 13 models or something. So I think I got 3 for having more models in the central, and then I got 1 for having more models on the on my side. He completely controlled the one on his side, and he wounded my leader. So it finished 4-3. So any number of things could change that. So if he'd have killed my leader, it would have been a 4-4 draw. If I had failed to kill that last orc, it would have been 3-1 to him. Yeah, so yeah, so it could have gone. It could have very, very, very easily gone the other way. But I did vote this as my favourite game because James is just a very, very pleasant guy, and it was like obviously we both wanted to win, obviously, but it was very chill, and I think we were both very fair, and it was just really, I don't know, it's just nice one to end on. So yeah, and the fact that it came right down to the wire, because I think the other 2 games were sort of mine to lose really, just because of the matchups and the scenarios. Whereas this one, I think whichever one of us won, like would have really, really earned it, and like just really sort of given a run for their money. So I'm obviously really pleased to have won the pod, but I'm just I'm really pleased that was the last game as well, because that was a really good one. I think we both played it right. Me sort of trying to sort of shut down areas with shooting, and then sort of run interference against the big scary warband, and sort of be more murdery against the Mouth of Sauron's warband. Again, I think I did the same thing I did against Joe, where I didn't have enough guys sort of immediately around the objective in sort of a ring, but I think I basically just didn't have the guys for it, so that's why it sort of came down to me just getting a bit lucky at the end with the guys I had nearby. I think he played it right in that the Mouth of Sauron's warband sort of just hid from ballistas and crossbows and stuff until the time was right to sort of come out and make a play for the central objective. Yeah, and I think the Mordor Trolls warband just kind of did what it was supposed to do in sort of steamrolling forwards, but it's just that I sort of roadblocked him long enough. Because we did go to time, so I think if the game ended naturally, I expect he would have won, but equally I think it probably would have gone on for a lot longer, because neither of us were too close to broken. But yeah, no, that's how it ended. So I won all the games day 2. Didn't do too well day 1. So I basically did exactly what I did at Nottingham, where I just got slapped about day 1 and then just won the pod. So so again, it was a great tournament by Marc. Like, all the tables were really good, and it was really nice energy, and well organised by him, obviously, and the prize support was really, really good, and everyone having all these prizes for all the pods, and and then the top 3, and then best painted and most sporting and all that. It was really good. I still don't know how I feel about the pod system, because obviously it's sort of been a double-edged sword both times for me, where I've sort of had a rough, either sort of rough matchups. So at the Nottingham one, I sort of had Blackgates open and played Nazgul twice in a row after winning my first game, and then was unlucky to lose the last game, and then it kind of meant I was sort of stuck where I was day 2. And the same thing sort of happened here, really. Apart from it was less matchup dependent and more me just playing like a flannel. But yeah, it's but then on the flip side, it's really nice because I felt like the stakes were really high at game 5, whereas it can just be like I'm mid-table. If I win this, I'll be slightly higher mid-table. If I lose, I'll be slightly lower mid-table. Whereas this, I felt like there was a lot to play for. So I don't know. I think the jury's still out. I think it's just like anything. Like each system has its advantages and disadvantages. But yeah, no, so it's really cool because I won the key to Erebor, which was nice. And yeah, I think that's a sort of a wrap on the games. Final thoughts on sort of the list and stuff. I think my main thing is that I just need to practice with these lists before I take them because I just sort of I don't know. I guess I just run out of time, so I don't have as much free time as I used to. So, like with the Newbury list, I'd never played that before. With this, I'd never played. I'd never even played Assault on Helm's Deep before. I've only played against it 3 times, and I think if I'd have played with it, because I know some people like practice and practice and practice with the same list, but I do like changing it up. But I still think a bit of practice is good. I think if I'd have done some practice, especially against some of the lists I had then, I think straight away I would have just taken the bomb because I know the other two Assault on Helm's Deep lists did. I sort of didn't because I was sort of like, well, actually, I can take more dudes and more crossbows and I don't really need a bomb. Who needs a bomb? And then you play assassination against the bears, and then you're like, what would be good is a bomb. So I think next time bomb would definitely be on the cards. Other than that, I think I was sort of discussing this a bit with Luke actually. Is I sort of think it's a bit scenario dependent and it can be a bit swingy, but then I think with the bomb it sort of evens it out a bit more. Because, for example, I was thinking if I'd have drawn Contest of Champions, that's not a good one for me. Whereas, because basically I'd have to deploy a sort of small screening force in the middle and then just run my leader out of there and then just shoot the crap out of their leader before he can kill anything and then sort of chalk a few up with mine. But I think with the bomb, you sort of stick the bomb in the middle near their leader and then suddenly you're like, well, you can charge me if you want, but you will get a bomb. um, and there's a few other scenarios like that where I was sort of thinking, my list struggles a little bit. And I suppose it's even going back to the first one against Sam when I was playing was it Hold Ground. Again, I was kind of a bit limited, but actually because he put all of his guys in that one space, which I guess he wouldn't have if there was a bomb, but if he'd done it in the same way, it means that I could have come on and sort of had a bomb sort of behind my main line or something, and even I think you might be able to detonate a turn one, maybe that would be pretty grim. But either way, sort of set the bomb up to sort of deal with Thorin and Bard, and just stuff like that. And I think assassination with the bears, like I would have shot the crap out of the bee warnings, and if the bears come near me, I just sort of move the bomb towards them. And I think that's what did Charlie in his previous game with Assault on Helm's Deep. So I think the bears just got bombed. So yeah, I think that's the way of evening it out. Is it sort of fun to play? I think it's sort of fun for me because I'm sort of shooting stuff and having a great time, and then sometimes when I have to move up, it's a bit scary, but I'm still getting involved and pushing stuff about. But I think especially when I played Sunny and it's more when I played Ash, I think both of those they kind of just had to cross an entire board being shot at, and there's not much you can do about it, and you kind of have to take it, and it's just like that. I suppose that can be a negative play experience. So when I took the Dragon Emperor to Newbury, I knew it's, in my opinion, just a bit of an overpowered legion. Basically, I think the Dragon Emperor is undercosted and does too much stuff, and you just sort of death ball up and push it forwards, and it's great. But equally, they're still sort of getting involved, and whereas I think when you're just sort of advancing slowly, being shot at, it can just be a bit of a pain. So I don't know if I take it again. I think I'd consider it for a GBHL 100 because obviously, it's meant to be really competitive. I don't think I'd take it to anything sort of lower than that, definitely, because I think it's just I'd rather take something a bit more fun, I suppose. But I don't know. I think maybe I'll try it with a bomb and then see. But yeah, no, it's good. So I haven't got any more tournaments until September. So until then, I hope to get a few battle reports up. So I will see you guys next time.